the Belugatoons podcast. And here's your host, Andrew Mortimer.
Hello there, this is the Belugatoons podcast. Thanks very much for choosing to listen to this episode in which I spoke to Kenny Armstrong, a good friend of mine and voice actor. And before we get into that, I want to talk about Chucky Chicken again, because in the previous episode I spoke to Michael Cook, the creator of the show. I'm happy to say I am still working on that project as an animator, and I am learning quite a lot. It is a bit like a class for me, because I kind of went in not knowing a great deal about animation, but it's going really well, and I wanted to talk about that just briefly because the exciting thing is we are now working on a pilot episode. That's right, we're going to be making cartoons. It's going to be a real thing. I wanted to let people know about this new project, and also because I want more people to know about Chucky Chicken. So I wanted to also mention the Patreon. We now have a Patreon. It's a Chucky Chicken Cartoons. If you look that up on Patreon, Chucky Chicken Cartoons. And so because Michael has been trying really hard to get funding for this project, and that's the really difficult thing, because we have a lot of creative people who are able to work with us on this project, but we're all just doing it kind of voluntary at the moment, and we want it to be a full-scale project. We want to be studio animators, and we really need funding. So and the work that's gone into the pilot just looks amazing. So I really want this to be a real thing, because I think it's wonderful that Michael had this idea and he pursued it, and because it was something that I really wanted to do a long time ago. So I know how it is. I mean, I didn't get as far as Michael did. I think he's actually achieved a lot more than I have. But I love how this pilot episode looks. So just from seeing all of that, seeing all the hard work that's going into it and how beautiful it looks, I want to encourage people to support this project. I want people to spread the word. I think it's going to be worth checking out. And so that's that out of the way. And I really got to talk about the recording process of this episode, because I'm not exactly a technical wizard. And when I asked Kenny if he wanted to be in the next episode of the podcast, he was very enthusiastic, and he was eager to be my guest. But this is only the second time I've done like an episode that's just like an interview from beginning to end. Because previously I've mostly done these segmented episodes, just with like myself talking about random things. Anyway, so this time around, I'm not sure that I got everything worked out as well as I could have, and as a result, we lost a bit of the audio. We actually streamed it to YouTube. I think that might have been my mistake. I don't think I've got the right equipment. Like, my internet connection is not that great, not that strong. So during that whole thing, the video frame rate, like I think because of a data issue, it wasn't coming through that well. It wasn't updating it the right rate or something. I don't know what the exact problem is. But I was trying to fiddle around with that while I was talking to Kenny, and I ended up losing all of his side of the conversation. So we spoke to each other for an hour, and so I was quite happy when we finished it, and it felt like it was all in the can, and it was when I listened back to it, that's when I found out that you can't. A lot of it is the last 20 minutes I think turned out to be unusable. So I am going to have to do some clever editing. No, I think because it's annoying because It means that the conversation kind of has a bit of an abrupt halt. It just grinds to a halt very abruptly. That's another thing. I really need to work on my podcast voice, because that was a big problem with this one. I didn't realize until I listened back just how many times I go but I'm doing it a bit now, and right now I'm a bit more comfortable talking, but it's just, I'm still not used to interviewing people, and we're trying to make it informal because Kenny's a good friend of mine. So yeah, and I'm a bit kind of like that. I'm a bit kind of hesitating and going a lot. I'm proving my point just as I speak. So I really want to get better at that, because I think right now I'm focusing a bit more. It's a bit annoying that I can do it okay now. Anyway, I won't ramble on anymore. We've got to get into the interview. But basically, I will be doing an outro to this because, as I said, there's nothing else there. So I'm going to have to wrap it up somehow. Right, okay, here we go. Here's my interview with Kenny. Right, I think we're all ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Kenny's here. Hi, Kenny.
Hello. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Great,
here.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. So just before we started recording, I mentioned the Super Mario Brothers movie, because I went to see it on Wednesday. I thought it was really good. Kenny, you haven't seen it yet, but
I'm going to be seeing it later this week with my brother, so I'm pretty pumped for it.
Yeah.
Actually, I need to get tickets later after this.
Yeah. I'm doing my best to keep spoilers to myself.
Oh, no, it's totally cool. Totally fine with that.
One of the things that I was actually thinking of a lot recently is animated TV shows. Because for several years now, I've heard a lot of people, like a lot of cartoon fans, say that they reckon that there are a lot of people who think that animation is just for children.
It's a very common misconception when it comes to.
But it's certainly a misconception. I remember though, because for a long time I was thinking, do people really say that? Because I don't really hear a lot of people say that.
Well, it happens more often in person more than it does on the internet, because when
it's not really
talk about it in person, it's like it sounds very textbook like. It's like, imagine like whatever they say on like the internet as like a quoted like tweet or a comment or whatever.
Yeah,
they actually say it in person. It's very scary of like word for word of like how they say it. It's like, what, really?
Yeah. Because I was actually I had a little conversation with my parents about this, because I started to realize my parents like animation. Like they're always happy to watch animated movies, but I can't really think of any animated TV shows that they've ever got into. And so I was talking to them about it, and yeah, they said they didn't really know what it was that kind of put them off TV shows.
It's very common for like the older audience.
Yeah.
Especially the elders to kind of understand this, that animation back in whatever like time they were in is very, very different now compared to today's animation, because animation has a lot more grounded theme that a lot of the younger audience and the millennials have like a lot in common with.
Right.
So for them, it just really doesn't connect with them.
I do feel like it's a generational thing. I feel like we're probably going to see more adults, like, because I actually know a lot of people my age, like from like people from there, like from 20 to 30 years old, who watch a lot of kids shows, like, because I just get a lot of enjoyment out of a lot of TV shows that happen to actually be for children.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially when like a lot of like children animated shows are actually treating them seriously.
Right. Yeah.
For the most part, like
I really
like
love that.
they
Yeah.
don't like stoop so low to their age level and just kind of like, oh, happy sunshine, whatever, and all that. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to do that. But sometimes, if you understand what a kid goes through, and kind of mirror it to a certain character that they're playing, and if this kid sees that, there's like, wow, I can relate to this character. This character is me. I completely understand what they're talking about. And there could be an argument where they're like, well, they're kids, they don't know what they want. That's not true. Kids always know what they want. They have so many wants, so many needs, so many like things that they need to help function in this world. And I think that having it reflect on animation is an eye-opener, especially in today's age.
And I think, I do agree with that. There is also the, because, wants and needs, the problem with that, though, is art is subjective. This is something that I'm very obsessed about. I go on about this a lot. Yeah. And I just think it must be really hard, actually, to know what's going to be successful and make money. Like, ultimately, you can never be 100% sure, because people could love it or they could hate it, and you don't know what kind of how the word is going to spread around, like what opinions are going to be shared. It's not something you can predict, because ultimately it's subjective, and I think people know what they want, but it does depend on the individual.
Right. Absolutely. 1,000% agree, because not all cartoons are gonna be like 100% for everyone, because some themes fit other categories, and other themes fit different categories for people as well. So it's not gonna impress absolutely everyone, but it is going to impress and like connect with a huge amount of people who watch it.
Because I was very excited about doing this episode, because you're a voice actor, and
yes,
I'm kind of I'm trying to get into animation. I'm learning animation, and I like to do collaborations and things, and
yes,
I really love the idea of us doing something together, at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely, in a heartbeat.
Like, I don't have anything specific. I'm not, can't think of anything right now off the top of my head, but I like the fact that I can get to know voice actors, and because I mean that is just a subject that I'm just generally fascinated by.
Oh yeah,
and I think
absolutely. And with voice acting, there's like a huge genre of like different types of voice acting that some people kind of underestimate, really, because at least for the voice acting field, there's like audiobook voice acting, there's podcast voice acting, there's audio drama series voice acting, there's anime voice acting, there's cartoon voice acting, there's movie voice acting, there's video game voice acting. All different types of voice actings have like different genres and presentable ways that they present their work. And I'm learning that myself too, only being in the field for about a year and a half right now, maybe 2. I kind of lost count, to be honest. Like, I've been submitting auditions since 2021, and
wow.
I didn't get my first gig until 2022. So, but then things started to pick up during the year 2022 and 2023 as well, currently right now. So it could be a tough start for voice actors, but it picks up after a while.
To me, that sounds very impressive, actually. 2021 doesn't seem that long ago.
It really doesn't. That's scary, because you think it's like, oh, it's been a few years, but it feels like much longer than that. Much longer than that.
Yeah.
I don't like this time frame.
Yeah, I think it was interesting what you were saying about different types of voice acting, because like even though I never really considered myself to be a voice actor, how many episodes of this podcast have I done? I forget now. The answer's right in front of me. Let me just find that message again. This is the 200.
It's been so many.
This is my 241st episode.
That's amazing.
It's only the second interview episode I've done. Actually, this is kind of a new format. Yeah. But
yeah,
the
the
interesting
is very different. But
yeah, I do think it's interesting to think back to when I started doing this thing. The way I would do it when I did those very first episodes, I'd just get out my iPad and open the microphone app and just record the whole episode on that app. No editing. Just
it's funny that you...
Because I thought I just need an audio file and then I just put it online,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we all start doing like projects, we all start with something like simple and affordable until we get serious about it, and then we bit by bit start saving up for it. Like when I started voice acting, it was when I started auditioning. I don't think it's more on the voice acting side. I think it's more on the live streaming side, but it still counts. I had like a snowball ice microphone that was like $30 discounted, and I've been using that for like my microphone quality stuff. And then over the years, I started using this mic that I currently use right now, and I also use that mic as well for my first gig on the audio drama series, The Night Shift Podcast. And then after a while, the stream community actually raised money to get a new microphone that's more like XLR connector. So I've been using that in my closet as my new voice acting microphone for now. And the quality is night and day for sure. It's a little bit more of a setup, but it's really, really good when it comes out. Yeah.
And I suppose because like my setup is still it's still pretty low budget. Like I don't have an arm for my microphone yet. I don't know if I am going to get one.
But it's convenient if you want a little bit more flexibility. Like if you want to stand up, you do have that option. But if you're going to be sitting for the most part, it's not really necessary.
And it is still like I have come a long way because, like I said, I was just using this app originally. But it's interesting how things changed over time because I didn't know how long I was going to be doing it. I didn't know how many episodes I was going to record. I think I just kind of pieced things together as I went along because I tried to focus more on the content and be like, because I would listen. I kept listening to each episode that I recorded as if I was a listener. And that way I was able to think, why am I not interested in what this guy has to say? Because it's hard when you're doing it on your own when you don't have someone else to talk to. But I was like, I don't sound like I'm very interested in any of this. So one of the things I did was I worked on my podcast voice, and I because I thought what is my podcast voice going to be like, and I just spent a lot of time working on that, and it took a long time. But I think because it was all about just finding a voice that I was comfortable with, but also one that sounded interested, and because it's not really a topic that I know an awful lot about, but I was just kind of thinking in terms of when I listen back to this, is it going to sound interesting? Am I going to make this stuff sound interesting?
Yeah.
But also things
honestly,
like my headphones, I could probably use a better, but these are very old now and they're quite they're not studio quality.
Yeah, but that's a great thing about like anyone who's wanting to get into the field that they're in, is that they don't have to buy the most expensive thing to start out with. They can get like an afford. I've seen like voice actors with like a $20 or $30 microphone from Amazon, and they start booking gigs with like local businesses
Yeah.
or whichever, and they make it work for them. Like with voice actors, like my friend Brizzy was able to get her first radio commercial with a Snowball ice microphone that was like $30 or $40.
Yeah.
So to anyone who's interested in getting into the podcasting or voice acting field, you don't have to buy like a $200 or $300 microphone just to start out. If you're
Mm.
passionate about something, you can get affordable things to start out,
Yeah.
work on it, and if you feel like that it's going to improve bit by bit, then save up for an upgrade that will improve on it. But always
Yeah.
start simple.
Start simple. Yeah.
That's some
Yeah.
that's something that I've learned with voice acting, and with anything that you do, like streaming too.
Mm.
Start simple. Don't complicate it and get like super expensive
No.
products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've been doing recently with my artwork. Because I've recently tried to practice traditional art a bit more because I've been doing so much digital stuff over the years.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm trying to make sure that because I considered getting some Copic markers, but then I thought I might buy them and just end up not using them. I might put them somewhere and just they'll gather dust. So I thought I do need to practice, because even though I kind of have an idea of how to do traditional art, I really need to make sure that I have a good idea of how to do this, because otherwise, if I start buying expensive art supplies, they're not going to make me better. If I buy Copic markers, they're not going to make my colouring better. I need to, I need to practice that myself. See what I can do with the cheap stuff. Yeah. So
Exactly.
So I'm decided I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to buy expensive supplies if I really feel like it's necessary and I know that I'm actually going to use them.
Yes, absolutely agree. And it's always good to and if you feel like you're actually gonna get some good traffic or like good gigs or whatever, after a while you're like, you know what, I think it would be worth to get an upgrade now,
Yeah.
and then bit by bit save up. So don't do it all yeah, I tell like people who are like interested in like voice acting or streaming, it's like, hey, don't start so strong so quickly. Start simple, start humble, and then work your way up. And I'm still learning that myself, really, because like when you're like been doing this for a while, even if it's like a few years, you're always learning something new.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like when I got this microphone, because I think I didn't buy this one until I'd recorded at least 100 episodes. And it was really just around that time, because I think I was quite happy using a cheap mic, because I think I went from using my iPad to my laptop's built-in microphone when I actually decided I wanted to edit the episodes. And then I dug up this old microphone that I'd bought when I was like in my late teens. I think it's when I was.
Oh wow.
It was just a cheap desktop microphone. Wasn't very good quality. But yeah, so because I was just using what I had, and I got this one when I realized that I'd recorded a lot of episodes and I was doing them every week. So I felt like I'd proven to myself that I could actually use a decent microphone, because I am actually committing to this a lot more, and I'm actually getting more listeners now.
Yeah, and it always feels good when like you're at that point where you're like, oh, maybe it is worth getting some new stuff, getting some new upgrades, all that fun jazz. I mean, it was like that with me too when I got my first gig with the podcast series I was in. I was like, you know what, maybe it's time to actually. And then like I had like a fun side project for a pal for a bridge episode of Chainsaw Man, and then after a while, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should start really taking this more seriously. So I was able to get the interface, I was able to get the microphone, and then a couple more came my way. Um, but yeah, it always feels good that when you're at that point where you're like, hey, now I think I can start taking this more seriously
Yeah.
and get the good stuff, or at least better stuff.
And because one of the things I've had on my channel, because once I started to get into live streaming, I did kind of create this subcategory for the video game stuff I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I called it the games room. So on my channel there is a playlist with all the videos I've made. Yeah. So yeah, and I think at the moment I still only have it's mostly games that I got on Steam. So I think Portal was the first game that I did as a live stream.
Oh man, Portal was such a classic game, and it was even better when they included a ray tracing version of it. I think I've beaten it in like one go, I guess, and I never really played Portal 1 before. I was surprised how quick I was able to get through it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about those games is, yeah, I was a few years late because I think when the first and the second game came out, I hadn't really been playing video games at all that much.
Yeah.
And I was trying to ease off them really because I was obsessed with them when I was a kid. So
haven't we all?
I thought there was something wrong with me, but I think a lot of people can relate to that.
No, I mean, as a kid, when you play video games, it's just like it's so interesting and like so new to you that you want to keep playing and playing it. And then when you become an adult, you still play it, but just not as much. Maybe it's just because we're so used to like what we've been seeing now that it doesn't really kind of grip us as much. I feel it's very opinion based, but each person's different, like you said before.
Yeah, and I it was interesting getting back into games because I think Steam actually helped me discover those games that I missed out on.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm just kind of slowly getting around to a lot of them. There are some pretty old games now that I've only just tried. Because there were the Portal games. I got those on Steam when there was a sale. And at that time, I also got the Steam controller and the Steam Link.
Oh wow!
For my TV, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were all on sale, so I got them at a really good price as a bundle. And I've been gradually building up a collection of games on there, and also now that I've got a Switch, I am using the Switch Online membership to play some of the classic Nintendo games.
Yeah, it's always fun to see like the games that you grew up playing or never had a chance to play, and now you finally had that chance to.
Yeah.
It's such a nostalgic feeling.
I think I've mostly been playing the games that I'm already familiar with, but there are quite a lot on there that I missed out on.
Yeah, and that was just a great way to get your hands back into the game again with it.
I was wondering, do you like Earthbound? Have you played that?
I played a little bit of Earthbound. I haven't quite finished it yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but it is a very good game. It's very, very good.
I made a start on it quite recently, but I haven't got very far yet, so I still don't really know what it's actually like. Because I'm a big fan of Undertale, and I've heard that that drew a lot of inspiration from Earthbound, and I can see the inspiration.
Oh yeah, that's what a lot of people have been saying.
Yeah. I mean, that's another example of one of the things that I think made me a bit more interested in gaming as an adult. And because I didn't really play a lot of those types of like RPGs or those games, but the graphics alone, I think, of Undertale brought back a lot of memories. Because it is the kind of it has that style that it looks very retro and
sometimes the retro style is just really appealing to people.
Hmm.
It just looks really nice to us, you know.
Oh, and I've got Cuphead. I haven't got very far on that game because I don't know if I'm not very good at it, or I find
honestly, with video games back in the day, it was just a lot of like things thrown right at us that we have like no instructions on like where to go or what to do. So when we play a game, we're like, where do we go from here? I'm lost.
I really like.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I really like Miitopia. I think that's an example.
Miitopia is so fun.
Yeah. It
is definitely one of my favorites.
That one really has a good balance of I suppose it isn't very challenging, really.
I mean, it's got a decent amount of challenge.
Yeah, because what I find is that you might have a battle that you're struggling with, but it's not such a chore to level up your gain all the HP and MP that you need to advance forward, because it is really a matter of reaching those goals, and once you've done that, then it's easier to advance. So I think that's a really good way of doing it, because it never really feels like a chore. I think that's what I don't like with some games like that. They can be a bit too challenging. I would say it's not too challenging, but it's not way too easy. It's not like I never felt like there was
People
no challenge
like holding
there.
Your hand.
Yeah, no hand holding. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a good balance.
Absolutely. I was trying to think of a game that I played a lot as a kid that like I didn't quite finish because I didn't understand like what to do, and I think I remember properly. I mean, it could have been. Honestly, I did play The Lion King on the Sega Genesis. That I didn't know what to do on that one. And even to this day, as I like watch like playthroughs of it, I'm like, I still don't know how this game works. It's just so hard. It's like really, really hard for a kid's game. Well, for a game that's like, from like a animated movie that's like family friendly. Well, family friendly-ish for The Lion King because dies. But it's just like I don't know what to do. It's just too hard.
Yeah, I was a bit like that with Mickey Mania. Have you ever played that game?
Mickey Mania. Let me look that up, actually.
I had it for the SNES.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I don't think I had I didn't have a Super NES growing up. I had a Sega Genesis, so I don't think I quite had that one.
Okay. Because I don't know if it was available on other consoles. I just know that my one was...
Oh, apparently it is. I didn't know that. Genesis, Super NES, and PlayStation 1, apparently.
Because I played it several times. I think when I played it as a kid, I didn't make it to the end.
Wow.
It took me a long time to learn, because I think that there are some levels where it's not really that clear what you have to do to get past a certain screen.
Yeah.
But it's pretty good. I revisited it not too long ago, and it's not bad. Because the idea of the game is each level is based on a Mickey Mouse short. It kind of goes through each of these. Starts with Steamboat Willie, and
it's one of my favorite cartoons.
Yeah, I think The Prince and the Pauper is the last one.
Oh man, that's a Disney classic on that one, The Prince and the Pauper.
I saw that in the cinema when I went to see Rescuers Down Under.
Really?
Yeah.
That must have been really fun.
Yeah.
Like honestly, seeing like a classic Mickey Mouse cartoon short or whatever on the big screen, that sounds life-changing in my opinion.
Yeah, I suppose I didn't realize at the time that this would be the kind of thing that like it's kind of like when I went to see Toy Story. I think I loved it when I went to see it for the first time, but I didn't realize how revolutionary it was. I didn't quite. I don't know if I appreciated that when I was a kid.
Yeah, I know for like my brother, who is about 8.5 years younger than I am, when we got Toy Story for the VHS, he never had a chance to see it in the theaters. I did, and I loved it. So seeing it on like VHS, he would watch that movie over and over again. And I got to a point once, and I don't know if I can like recreate it or whatever, but there was a moment where my dad found my brother asleep on a chair, face down like this. And granted, he was small, so his legs were dangling with the Toy Story movie on, and he was passed out watching the movie, face down on the chair, legs dangling. It was the funniest thing my dad has ever seen. And I wish I could find that VHS again, because if I do, I'm going to make sure I keep that in my core memory forever. It was so funny. Yeah, but what's really interesting about, and it's back to the subject of animation, voicing cartoon characters or animated characters is much more different than people really anticipate, because, and I've learned this in class, is that with voice acting cartoon characters, there's a lot of energy and a lot of characteristics you have to give to like a person or an animal or a creature or whatever, because they're so full of life. And I think what really interests people into these characters is that they're lively, they got so much like spark to them that if you don't voice them right, people won't really connect with them. So
yeah, I see.
What I've learned in class is that when you put yourself into a character, one, you have to understand like what their personality is, and two, you have to give everything, like all your emotions and like physical like movements and just whatever you can think of to bring this character to life. So I think people really underestimate like how difficult voicing a character could be, because there's a lot of energy that you got to put into it. Much more compared to like anime or video games.
Yeah, that's actually it's quite a mystery to me, because again, I think maybe there's a bit of the old subjective. Like, I mean, I don't know, but bringing a character to life. There are so many ways you could do that, and I think that's where I would struggle. I wouldn't really know. I have a hard time knowing what works and what doesn't work.
Oh yeah, and honestly, that's totally fine, because I think for a lot of folks who try to auditions for cartoon characters or animated movie characters, we're only given a description, so it's up to us to kind of bring that character to life as best as we can. We're not. Sometimes we're lucky and we're given like a picture of the character, so we have somewhat of a reference that we can use. But a lot of times it's just a description.
Yeah,
and we just work off of that. And I know when I get auditions for animated stuff, I'm thankful enough to get like an idea of like what the character looks like on picture. But there's like maybe one or two where I'm just like, I got to do my best to use like a paragraph description of like how they are.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine how, because for me that would be really hard, like just to come up with a voice based on a description. Because I guess I'm like a visual learner, I suppose you could say. So I do kind of depend on having something visual.
Well, yeah, I can imagine with like animators. I can imagine it's harder for animators, especially coming up with characters, because you have to have a reference.
Yeah.
And when animators don't have a reference, it's a lot tougher for them to like bring that character to life, I can imagine.
And because that's another thing I've getting back to the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah.
For the most part, I think the actors, like the voice cast in that movie, did a pretty good job, and
yeah, that's what I've been hearing about it.
The voices fit the character. Like, I think it. If you think about the design of these characters, I think the majority of the voices of the cast fit these characters perfectly well.
Oh wow!
Maybe one exception, but I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah,
don't want to talk.
I mean, I've heard one from like a movie reviewer or whatever, but I mean that was on me when I watched it. But yeah, I mean, I for the most part, I don't think it's entirely 100% of the actor's fault, obviously, because when we do voice acting stuff or when we present stuff, a lot of times we're given feedback on our performances. And if the feedback doesn't fit the status quo of what the situation is going on, we have to do it again until we get it right. And it could be a possibility that one person that people are talking about, maybe the actor did great with the voice, but I don't think they were given good direction. That's what I feel. That's a good point.
Yeah, I feel that way.
It's all about direction.
Yeah,
I mean, anything
absolutely.
that you do is all about direction. If you're not given good direction, it's not going to present itself very well. So whenever I do like VA stuff, like with the podcast series, I send in my stuff and I ask, hey, if it sounds great. If you need me to try something else out for an approach, let me know. And a lot of times when you're doing voice acting, sometimes you'll be on a Zoom call with someone and then you try the recording out, see if it works. And if it doesn't, they make you do it again, but probably with a different way, like different A/B and all that. And with the classes I've been taking, it's like, oh, I've been learning a lot about taking direction. So when you have good direction, you'll have good results.
Right. Yeah. And I know from experience, actually, because I've been working on an animated web series called Chucky Chicken.
Yes.
That was what the previous episode of this podcast was all about, because I had Michael Cook on as a guest and we talked about it then.
Very nice.
It's very hard when you're like working as a team, like on these kind of projects, to be on the same page, I reckon.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose like it's definitely hard for us because a lot of us are in different countries. Like I'm here in the UK and Michael is in the States, and so yeah, we've had some difficulty, like, and it hasn't been too bad, thankfully, but it's hard when like all these people are assigned a different role, and they need to make sure that they're all on the same page. So
yeah,
I think that can be one of the difficulties with directing. Like it's definitely hard when you can't always directly communicate with the other members of the team.
Yeah, I mean, with time zones, it's always because I know with like my podcast series I'm a part of, a lot of the times I have to send in my takes via email and have them respond back as quickly as possible because they're in the UK area and I'm in America, so time zones are like 8 hours. I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like an 8 hour difference, like pretty much a whole day, almost a whole day to be honest. So I have to make sure it's like, okay, I'll get it done, as soon as I can, make sure it's done right, give them like 2 or 3 takes and send it all over to and whenever we do Zoom calls, I usually have to answer during the nighttime because sometimes in California, I was taking classes from there. So while it's like 5 or 6 p.m. their time, it's like 8 p.m. my time.
Yeah.
So I usually finish class at like 10 or 10:30.
Yeah.
So if you're doing like group projects, it's like with people all over the world, be prepared for different time zones.
Yep. I don't know if it's a rare thing or not, but have you ever done a voice recording where you had other actors in the same studio with you?
Well, since I work mostly from home, I never had really a chance to work in the studio with other folks. Hopefully that will be a point where I'll be able to do it. I think it will be really, really fun to feed off each other's energy.
Yeah.
I kind of have that experience with regular acting with Thomas Sanders. We kind of like practice like the lines together before we actually bring it out. And practicing definitely helps like decreasing the number of times we have to make the takes for it. Because if you don't practice, sometimes you'll end up doing 5 or 6 takes before you get it right. But if you practice first and then do the recording, you end up getting it in like 2 or 3 takes. Like one take I did where it was a sketch where Thomas was like, hey, you should probably, I was sick or whatever. And Thomas was like, hey, you should checked. And the sketch was you rely heavily on facts for like daily stuff. So for that sample, I was like, oh yeah, I just heard that if I'm sick, I just bite into this lemon. And that take, we only did it once because beforehand I had to make sure that, our, back on back, like lines and everything were like perfect. And plus, biting into a lemon, you can only do it once.
Yeah.
So, but it's kind of similar to the voice acting field too. Sometimes it's always good to practice with other people just to make sure that you're presenting it properly. But for me, since remote work, voice acting is a thing now, it doesn't happen to me as much. I would love for it to happen if I ever had a chance to. Like, if someone invited me to like LA for like a few weeks, I'm like, hey, you know what? I will be more than happy to work with you than those and do that.
Yeah. As I say, I don't know if in voice acting if it's that common for numerous members of the cast to record together, but I know for a fact that The Simpsons did it that way, I think, for pretty much every episode they've ever done.
Oh yeah, and that's because a lot of the people there had the benefit of being local. I think is the right word of saying it, and they can just go to the office and deliver their lines together. But I know for a lot of like indie projects like games and online series, a lot of it was remote work.
That's a good point actually, because
especially for that what's that new animated, hang on, I'm trying to look that up here. It was a highly, like, I think it was called Lackadaisy, I think.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I think a lot of them were remote. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I would imagine that they were, because I think it's an interesting thing, because on one hand, I think you do get a bit of a better performance out of a voice cast if they are all together in the same studio.
Yeah, like a live reading.
Yeah,
live reading, like a great technique.
But yeah, you're absolutely right, because obviously the Simpsons cast, they must be all based in pretty much the same location, because it wouldn't be practical for them to fly the cast in and make sure they're all together in the. So you do kind of. I mean, from what I've heard, it's just Dan Castellaneta, Nancy Cartwright, Julie Kavner, and Yardley Smith who do it together, I think. Mm-hmm. Maybe one or two other voice actors, but there are a lot of other actors in The Simpsons who have to do their lines remotely. And I think it's a bit of there are pros and to, because it's obviously a lot more practical to do things remotely, and obviously these days you can have people record their lines in the same session, and we have the technology so that they can all be linked up via web chats, and I just think that it is probably an easier way to get a better performance out of people if they are all in the same room. But I don't know.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess that makes sense. But and I don't know where I was going with that, actually.
No, it's okay. Totally okay.
I think I had something else.
But yeah, I think what you're trying to say is that there is a huge benefit for people to work in person to deliver the lines or to deliver their work. But with remote work, it is a lot tougher. I think that's the right way of putting it.
Because I suppose
it's definitely possible, but it's just really tricky.
And like you said, like if you're doing live action work, then you're gonna have to be because pretty much if the scene is going to be filmed on camera, then that's exactly how it's going to look. So it's an interesting, because you don't really get the option to do things remotely. I mean, you've got green screen, but people can usually tell with green screen. And as far as I'm aware, it's not that common for actors to work remotely in live action.
Oh anyway. Yeah, especially since the pandemic began. I think doing remote stuff is becoming more common now, and they're trying to convert them back to working in the office. But for folks who really want to get into the voice acting field, a lot of them don't have that luxury. They'll have to rely on like statewide or citywide agents to sign up with, if they're even given that opportunity to. Like for me, I don't have an agent. I have to look for roles myself and submit auditions myself. So it's a little bit trickier for me to do it, but it's definitely not impossible to get roles.
Mm-hmm. I'm just resetting my camera.
It does. No, you're okay. It just does make it easier for folks to find roles available if they're signed up with an agent.
So yeah, I'm afraid that's it. That's where it stopped. And I'm really sorry. If you're listening to this, Kenny, I'm so sorry that the episode turned out like this, because we did talk quite a bit, and we had some more interesting things to talk about. And I think I was just starting to come out of my shell. That's the really annoying thing. I think I was starting to talk a bit more confidently, and I had some interesting things to say. So yeah, bit disappointing, but live and learn. Future episodes are hopefully going to be a lot better, and I might enlist some help, because it's really hard to do this on my own. Right, and one of the things that Kenny, I wanted to make sure I put this in here. Kenny mentioned his social network links, That was one of the things that got lost. So I'll read them here. I'll read them to you now. So you can find him. You can find Kenny Armstrong on IMDb. He did say there are a number of Kenny Armstrongs on there, but I'm not sure. I don't know off the top of my head how you can tell which one's which, but he is on IMDb. His Twitter is Kenny Guy Games, and he's That Kenny Guy on YouTube and Twitch, and also his Instagram is That Kenny Guy 1. That's an important distinction. You've got to remember the 1, just a 1 at the end. Right. If you want to find my social network links, you can find them all on my website, belugatoons.com, BELUGATOONS. So, thank God that's over. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Do take care. And I am off to the pub.